You probably know someone like this. The person who shows up when something has gone completely wrong. A leaking pipe, a dead car battery, a corrupted file, or even someone having a total emotional breakdown. And instead of panicking, they go quiet for a second. They don't rush to Google the answer with shaky hands. They just think. And then they start fixing it. And you're just standing there, wondering why your first reaction was to fall apart while they somehow stayed calm. So what actually makes these people different from everyone else? It's not only experience. In fact, once you understand what's really happening, you'll start noticing it everywhere. This connects to something psychologist Albert Bandura described back in the late 1970s, a concept known as self-efficacy. Put simply, self-efficacy is the belief that you can deal with the situation in front of you. It's not blind positivity or general optimism. It's a very specific feeling that says, I can handle this. It's a very specific feeling. It's the sense of, I've dealt with hard things before, and this thing in front of me can also be handled. Bandura found that this belief by itself can strongly affect how long a person keeps trying before they gives up, and how much effort they're willing to put in when the problem becomes difficult. So where does this kind of person come from in the first place? That's where it starts to become personal. Think about what happens the first time a child tries to repair something, actually tries, and it works. Even if it's something small. They move the wire a little and the lamp turns on. They restart the computer and suddenly it works again. They press on a cut and the bleeding slows down. That moment changes something in them, and it isn't really about the lamp, the computer, or the cut. It changes the way they see themselves when they face problems. Suddenly, the world no longer feels like something that only happens to them. It becomes something they can step into, touch, and influence. And after that, whenever something breaks, their nervous system doesn't immediately shut down. Instead, it shifts into a kind of quiet curiosity, almost like, okay, this is a puzzle. I've solved puzzles before. Bandura called moments like these mastery experiences, and research repeatedly shows that they are the strongest source of self-efficacy. Not someone telling you that you can do it, not simply watching another person do it, but actually doing it yourself. That is what stays with you. It becomes a learned way of dealing with uncertainty. Julian Rotter spent many years researching what he called locus of control, how strongly a person believes that their own actions can shape outcomes, instead of everything being decided by luck, chance, or fate. And people who are closer to the internal side of that scale don't just tend to be better at fixing problems. They are also less likely to develop depression. They deal with stress in ways that don't require their whole life to fall apart. They keep going for longer. And this pattern has been observed across different cultures and different age groups. That feeling that your effort truly makes a difference seems to be one of the most protective psychological traits a person can develop. But most people like this were not simply born that way. It usually began with very specific moments, often in childhood, when someone either gave them a sense of control or left them with no choice but to discover it on their own. Sometimes it was a parent who said, I'm not going to give you the answer right away. I'm going to help you work it out. And sometimes it was a parent who simply wasn't there to help, so the child had to learn how to help themselves. Both paths can lead to the same kind of person. And here's the surprising part. From the outside, it may look like confidence, but underneath, it's actually something very different. When a fixer steps into a situation where something is broken, they are not completely sure that everything will work out. They don't have some magical promise that the solution will appear. They feel the same uncertainty that you feel. What's different is that uncertainty doesn't feel like a final judgment to them. It feels more like the place where they begin. There's a psychological concept for this: tolerance of ambiguity. The ability to stay inside a situation where you don't have the answer yet, without completely falling apart while you're trying to figure it out. People who struggle with ambiguity usually need an answer quickly. They need to feel right now that everything is going to be okay. And when they can't get that reassurance, anxiety takes over. They freeze or they pass the problem to the person who seems calm and slowly step back. But the fixer in your life learned, somewhere along the way, how to stay inside that uncomfortable space between not knowing and figuring it out. Okay, let's pause for a moment. I want to be honest about something because I think it would be unfair not to mention this. Some people who seem able to fix everything, and I mean everything, emotional problems, practical problems, logistical problems, even other people's chaos, are not always doing it from a place of real strength. Some of them learned to fix things because that was how they earned their sense of belonging. Approval came when they had the solution. And at some point in their life, simply standing there helpless felt genuinely dangerous. So their nervous system made a decision. I will never be helpless again. And that is less like a real superpower and more like a coping mechanism dressed up as one. You can usually see it when you ask them to let someone else handle something. They physically can't relax. They hover nearby. They give advice nobody asked for. They need the problem to be fixable, not only for your sake, but because something unresolved in their environment feels like something unresolved inside of them. But then there is another kind of fixer, and this is the kind that is really worth talking about. The person who fixes things out of genuine curiosity, because broken things honestly fascinate them. For them, the space between something not working and finally working is one of the most interesting places in the world. These are the people who might take apart something they already repaired, just so they can understand it more deeply. They ask questions that may have no practical purpose at all. They explain what went wrong in a level of detail nobody asked for, almost excited, as if they just discovered something beautiful. These are the people who fell in love with competence itself, not just the final result, but the process, the figuring it out. Being around people like that can be one of the most recalibrating things you do for yourself. Because what they show you, without even trying, is that not knowing how to do something is only a temporary state. Broken does not have to mean permanent. It means you can put your hands on a problem and actually shift it, change it, move it forward. You may be sitting here realizing that you are one of these people, and you have never really thought about why. Or you may be realizing that you are not like this, and that the idea of becoming this kind of person feels genuinely unfamiliar to you. And if you are in that second group, I want to speak to you directly. The reason you hand your broken things to someone else is not because there is something wrong with your character. It comes from your history, from a set of experiences that taught you that problems are things that happen to you instead of things you can affect. And that is not permanent either. The whole structure of self-efficacy, Bandura's main point, is that it grows through experience, through small wins. Tiny moments where you can say, I tried and it worked. Not huge, heroic repairs, just small things. You tightened the screw. You made the phone call. You didn't sit there waiting for someone to come and rescue you. That is where it begins. But understanding why you are wired this way is only part of it. The harder part is actually doing something with that understanding, because awareness without structure can easily become just another thing your brain keeps looping over. You notice the pattern, you give it a name, and then you spend a lot of time thinking about it, but nothing actually changes. Maybe you've noticed this too. You understand what's wrong, you can even explain it, but your actions don't really follow. You stay in the same loop, telling yourself you'll deal with it later. Under this video, I've attached links to book resources that will help you understand yourself in these kinds of psychological situations. I hope this information will be very useful to you.